All right, so what is embodiment? That is what we've been looking at. I want to bring together some of the things we've been exploring. I sometimes say, like, what is embodiment is like more like teaching a child what love is rather than giving a dictionary definition. So that something like the subjective study of the body would be like dictionary, but what does that mean, right? Another thing we've been looking at is embodiment as a field of study. So I gave the example, you could be doing warrior pose, like just as exercise, or you could be doing it to develop your warrior qualities. Yeah, and then it becomes a more embodied practice. And we do need an embodied practice. Have you noticed that reading books on things generally doesn't help? So one of my teachers, Wendy Palmer, used to call them shelf help instead of self-help, because they usually stay on the shelf. Theory doesn't always fix our problems. Yeah. Now, if you just want information, you can just look up Wikipedia or watch a YouTube video, it's fine. But if you actually want to change, if you want to address some of the things we're looking at, like boundaries or life purpose or leadership, these things are embodied. What does that mean? It means it's not just learning about something that's the key, it's learning to be something. Yeah? So we've also been exploring this idea of how you are who you are. So there's a way you construct yourself. So like some of you now are leaning back, some of you are sitting forward, some of you are taking space, some of you are narrow, some of you are more up, some of you are more down. And these aren't just, these aren't biological things, right? So it's not so much like if you have, big legs or wide shoulders, it's more how you live in and as a body. So this is quite a different way of viewing the body, because Western culture is essentially a sort of objectified culture. We are encouraged to see ourselves as machines. This is the key metaphor in our culture, is everything is a machine, right? It's like an industrial metaphor. This is different from most of your ancestors who were Paleolithic. 99.9% of your ancestors saw the world as very alive, and the body as a site of the sacred, the body as a site of spirituality, not just a meat taxi or a brain taxi. Yeah? So the ancient Greeks, for example, had a word for body as meat, which was sarx, and a word for body in its lived relational, cultural, spiritual wholeness, which was soma. Maybe you've heard the word somatic, which is a word related to embodiment. So they had this idea as a different concept. So the Olympics, for example, were not so much like sports like we'd see it. It was about the ennoblement of the soul. It was about creating a Greek citizen. It was about developing virtue, right? They understood that you don't develop virtue by reading about it or talking about it. So if you want to become braver, you have to do things that require bravery, right? And hopefully we do these things intelligently in a way that doesn't damage us, and we grow, in a sensible way. Embodied praxis, or embodied practice, embodied activity. Yes, we're mindful, we're feeling the body, but we're also aware of our bodies as history and future. So it'll be a little bit poetic. We were talking about this yesterday. This is a little bit like music. Okay, so when you hear a note, bing, in music, you're also aware of all the notes that came before it, right? So it's part of a symphony or a chorus or a pop song, whatever. And you're also aware where it's going. So if I say doot, 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 right? The future of that tune, I'm giving a silly example, the future of that tune is in that music. So doot, 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 right? It's there already, it's there. So embodiment's something like this. So on the one hand, the past is embodied. So your way of staying safe we were working with, or for you it's the amount of taking touch you'd had. That's for the immediate past. For you, it might be much more like long-term. There's this cultural pattern or personal history. In some cases, trauma, right? This is what I call the cage. It's a slightly insulting way to look at the way of being we've become. It's limiting if it's the only one we can do. Right? There's nothing wrong with being small. There's nothing wrong with being a giver. There's nothing wrong with being up here or down here. The key thing is it part of your range? Yeah, or else we're simply, the totalitarian state of your past conditioning is in charge of your life. Does that make sense? Sort of the fascist dictatorship of what came before. Yeah, and then you might be like, I'm a rebel, so I'm free. But if you're a rebel because the English oppressed your people for 300 years, as Irish example, then you're not really free, are you? You're just conditioned by having to be a rebel. So when embodiment is unconscious, it's a dictatorship. Yeah? So the unconscious embodiment is forcing us to see the world in a certain way, think in a certain way, relate and connect in a certain way. We're tyrannized by this because we have no choice. We have no freedom. Yeah? Whereas a conscious embodiment is, how do I want to be today? So sometimes I sort of simplify my entire 20 years of work and just say, it's how are you? How do you want to be? So first of all, you need to know how you are. What are you bringing today? Like, you know, from the level of I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm horny, I'm excited, you know, this basic level of feeling, basic level. Yeah? It's important. You know, if you're tired, you're going to be viewing this. Hello, future people on the internet. Your embodiment is what you're viewing this through, right? It's not that your objective camera that's just recording me, like the iPhone. Does it make sense? Like you're all listening through you. You can't listen through anything else. This is the truth of postmodernity, the fact that your listening is always biased. Does it make sense? So if you were to open up or come forwards or, you know, go back, you would listen differently. You could try if you want. Try listening to the next 5 minutes differently. Yeah, like everyone shift position. It's for the sake of experiencing Mark Walsh from a different view. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So when we have awareness, we can then say, do I have a choice? Yeah? And you only have a choice if you're able to do other things, if they're not overwhelming. So your normal embodiment will be comfortable because it's habitual. But I've known women, for example, who are comfortable with abusive partners. Doesn't mean it's good, but they was familiar to them. Anyone come across this phenomena? Like the sort of light version is you've just got a friend who keeps dating idiots. You're like, why do you keep picking idiots? You know? And it's like, because that's what's familiar to them. Yeah, it's like, cross your arms this way, cross them that way. One is familiar. People do what's familiar. So conscious embodiment is where we choose to practice something different. It can help if we have an embodied practice to break out of our normal way of being. So if our normal way of being is very open, we might have to practice boundaries. Yeah, and that might mean, you know, doing karate or bench pressing or chaturanga or something where we can find that no, that push away. Yeah. So embodiment can be thought of as a field of all these different things. It can be thought of as philosophical inquiry, the subjective view of the body. It can be how we are, is one very simple definition. So how, it's a very interesting word. It's the manner with which. So how are you constructed? Yeah? It's the way we would build you, your personality, your being, your culture, all these things. Yeah? It's always relational. So right now, you're embodied in relationship to me, Mark Walsh. Some of you have a relationship with me. You're embodied in relationship to everyone you've ever met who's a teacher. So I didn't have very good experiences with teachers when I was young, right? I had a few good teachers. So I have a certain relationship to teachers. Anyone feel that? Yeah? Like who had, like me, like bad relationships with teachers? Okay, so you're probably embodying a little bit of that now. It's not my fault. I've been nice to you all day. I hope. Right? Or authority. So most people have been at some point abused by authority. So whenever I teach, this is something I have to deal with. Yeah? Whether it's be good girl, be a rebel, be passive aggressive, which I'm told is a very Czech one, maybe. Yeah? So that's also enacted here. Right now, you're embodying a little bit of this relationship to authority, to teachers, to Mark Walsh personally, your cultural embodiment, even like the time of year, right? Like summer, I kind of come out, then winter, you kind of go in. Do you have that experience? Yeah. So we work with cycles a lot in embodiment, not just like your embodiment. So this isn't about saying you are this embodiment, you are small, or you are this. It's not that. It's much more organic than that. Embodiment is always a dance, it's a play, it's a poem, it's music. It's not, you know, we've done your Myers-Briggs and you're an MBTJ. Or, you know, these kind of tests like this. It's like, yeah, fuck that. We're more chaotic than that. We're more juicy than that. So what is embodiment? Here's another answer. Not what you think. Not what you think. So if you're like, I know what embodiment is, you're not in your body. So a disembodied answer to the question of what is embodiment is a bad answer. It's kind of like when you do Zen, right? You have to answer riddles, koans, they're called questions. And they'll say, what is the sound of one hand clapping? And you can't answer it logically, but you could do something. What is embodiment? This! Yeah, it's like a scream, it's a noise, it's a play. Many of you are improvisers, right? It's the knowing what to be in that moment. We were talking about this yesterday, right? So in improv, if you leave it too late, you miss the moment. So like your embodiment, if it's really alive and conscious, it's not just like, well, I'm this, it's right now what's required, right now. Yeah, and that's where do you come from? Like a body is history. If you look around, you don't see everyone sitting in the same way, right? The chairs are all the same. Chairs are all the same size. Okay, we should all be sitting in more or less the same way, but people don't. Yeah, they sit like this and like this and like this because they're creating themselves. Because their history suggests that this is a better way to sit than something else. Yeah. And of course you feel comfortable, but the reason you feel comfortable is because that's what you've practiced. It's like the smell of your own house. It's comfortable, it's invisible even. So my job as an embodiment teacher is to make some of the invisible visible. And then we also practice some skills, some simple things like we're going to practice some self-regulation, some resilience skills. I was asking you, where do you come from? Like that's part of your being. Some people are in touch with that. Yeah? Like I remember I was in Ukraine in week 3 of the war. It was pretty dangerous. And I was with my Aikido friend. And we grew up in Aikido together. We used to live in my Aikido dojo. And we suffered a lot together. You get beaten up a lot. It's like tough. You're hungry. It's cold. You know, it's like old school training. And we're on the way to Ukraine. And we're delivering medical supplies. And it was a little bit unsure what would happen. It was very early in the war. And we just kind of reminded ourselves, like, where do we come from? We had teachers, we have a lineage. This is not our first time taking medicines across an international border, let's say. We reminded ourselves of, some of you got the joke, we reminded ourselves of like what was supporting us. And then all of a sudden the fear's gone, right? Because it's not me and Pietra, it's my Polish friend. It's not just me and him. It's also William Smith-Sheehan, who was our Aikido teacher. And it's my dad, and it's all these people that came before us who we're leaning into. And I think modern humans have lost that sense. So we were playing with the practice of where do I come from? Yeah, there's other practices. Where am I going? What am I passionate about? That's another practice, right? If you're in a culture that's like, nah, what am I passionate about? Is a practice. So these are things we can get better at. Like I can access my passion, I can access my history. These are useful things to access. Yeah. Skills, it's not esoteric. If you look in my second book, there are 8 chapters, which are 8 skill sets. And when I work in business, this is how we break it down. It's like, right, body awareness. This is get good at this. You need to be aware of your body. Okay, meditate on your body. Great. Okay, now self-regulation. Right, let's do some yoga, some martial arts, maybe some cold showers. Let's build that ability to self-regulate. Yeah. Okay, empathy, listening. For improvisers, you have that practice, right, to really tune in to your partners. Okay, leadership. How can I inspire people? How can I change them? Yeah. So what I'm speaking right now, I'm interested in the words a bit. Mostly I'm interested in the music of what I'm saying. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. The music of what I'm saying. So it's like, am I trying to calm you down or wake you up? Yeah? Am I trying to space you out or get you together? That's more important as a facilitator or as a parent, for example, right? As a parent, like, I've worked a lot with kids. You spend a lot of time calming them down and waking them up. Mostly calming them down and then some waking them up. Yeah? That's co-regulation. So these are skills. There's some people who are really good at that, right? Like if I look around, which of you are human coffee? Who's like Red Bull? You're a bit Red Bull. Danny's a bit Red Bull. Like you're gonna wake me up. Yeah. Like look around. Who would you like if you had to like get the party started? Who would you grab to get the party started? Not so many of you. A few of you. And who would you pick if you were like stressed out and you wanted to calm down? Like who would like relax you? Who's human chamomile tea? Like look around, who would you pick? Yeah, quite calming, yeah. Yeah, does this make sense? So this is, I notice this when I work with an interpreter, because when I work with an interpreter, I say, da-da-da-da-da, and the interpreter says, do-do-do-do-do. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. I said, da-da-da-da-da, and they say, do-do-do-do-do. It's like they fuck up my whole training. So I have to train my interpreters in embodiment. Right? Julie was my interpreter in Moscow. I can't go to Moscow anymore, but unfortunately I'll be killed. But Julie's my interpreter for many years, my best friend in Moscow. And she's this very sweet, nice, polite little girl. She's lovely. If you're out there, Julie, hello, I love you. Ya tebia lublю. And Julie's like this, but not when she translates me. When she translates me, she says, and Mark said, and she does this again. She's great. It's like, mwah! It's like good actress, good interpreter, you know, she's really, and now she has this ability because we do trainings like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. She's spent like a lot of time next to me. She's like my shadow. And actually it's weird, when I'm in Russia, I get so used to her being there and translating that sometimes in the evening I forget she's not there and I'll go into a shop and say something in English and I'm like, why don't they understand? You know, it's because she's not there translating, right? Anyway, so she's got so used to my embodiment, she can now do it when she needs to. She calls it turning her Walsh on. Right? She's got it, so she's built her range. Does that make sense? And she's still sort of sweet and nice and polite most of the time. But, you know, if she needs to, she can be like, fuck you, yeah? She's got, like, she's gained this, like, extra skill. Does it make sense? And she gained it just from being around the person that you can learn it through modeling. This is what kids do. Kids basically look at their parents, they sort of become some combination, right? Yeah? That's how culture works. Little children don't look like their culture. 5, 10 years old, they look like their culture. Does it make sense? Like little Russians are like, smiley, happy, and then by 10 they're like, "Sto." Yeah? Okay, so that's how we learn embodiment, through immersion, role modeling, and also practice. So me before martial arts was a more chaotic version of me. Like, I'm still pretty chaotic, but now I have the ability to get up and be disciplined and, you know, not be an alcoholic and stuff like that. You know, like martial arts gave me like this Japanese, like, okay, you know, people say I'm like organized, and I'm like, I'm not naturally organized. I just learned this embodiment, you know, sitting in rows in a uniform, like, sensei, you know, you get this. It's good. It's good. I needed it. For me, that was like a medicine. Does it make sense? You might be the opposite. You might need to go to conscious dance and kind of, you know, go crazy, right? Yeah. So embodied practice is how we learn this. And you won't learn it from a book. You won't learn it from my videos. People on the internet, you're wasting your time. But please like and subscribe before you turn it off. Okay, so... You know what's really weird being a teacher when it's videoed is I have 2 different teachings. I have to teach you guys because you're here, but I'm also teaching these unknown future people on the internet. It's just the strangest. It's because I'm trying to relate to you, but then I also have to do this other layer of relating. Does that make sense? Maybe your actors here know this. It's like if you have the audience and then you have the future audience because it's recorded. It's 2 different feelings. It's 2 different relationships. Is it making sense? Questions? I want to make sure you're cognitively clear before I go back to playing games and jumping around. So, for the intellectual people.
I don't know if I got it right, but if I try to like summarize what you're saying,
please.
That we can use our body to solve problems, like with working with our body.
Yes, because just so the mic, it might not have picked it up. So we can use our bodies to solve problems. Yes, you can use your body to change how you see the world, what thoughts you have. So for example, as a coach, if I'm in my habitual embodiment, I'm going to be thinking of a set of questions, and then I change my embodiment, and all of a sudden new questions come. So it like makes me a better coach. As a parent, you might be like, right, this is how I handle my child, and then you change your embodiment, and then you get another possibility. Yeah. So in terms of creative problem solving, absolutely. So it's not the only way. It's not the only thing we can do, but certainly useful. Yeah. Good. Does anyone else want to check their understanding or ask a question? Yes, David.
We're talking about the cages. Like, is the goal to identify them or to break them or
smash them? Okay, so do we just identify the cages or do we break them? So by cage, I mean a habitual set of patterns that reduces your freedom. Okay? So we have to have some pattern, like I joke, everyone's fucked up, right? So you have to have some pattern, but if it's all we can do and we have to do it, you're not so free. So generally the model of embodied education, it's not a healing model it's not like a diagnostic, you have this condition. It's basically saying become aware of what you do, and then if you want, build range, build other possibilities, other skill sets. Yeah? So the model is educational rather than therapeutic or healing. in that sense. It's not like, oh, your problem is this. It's just like, hey, let's notice our patterns. And I'd say if everything in your life is working, you don't have to worry, right? But if something is not quite there, right, it might be about boundaries. It might be about, I'm not in touch with my life purpose. It might be, my relationship with my boss is all screwed up. You might need to do something. What's the definition of insanity? You know this one? It's like doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So we take that one back. In embodiment, we say, okay, if you do what you always do, you get what you always got. But why do you do what you always do? Let's take it one back, because you are how you always are. Does it make sense? Being, doing, results. Yeah. Whereas in embodiment coaching, we say, okay, great, you want a different result. Okay, you want a better relationship or a new job, whatever. Yeah. Okay, but what are you doing? Okay, where's that coming from? This is the level we need to look at. Yeah. So you can read a book on, how to have boundaries. You've got all the information, but you haven't changed your way of being. So we could say this is an ontological approach, yeah, a way of being approach, rather than, tricks. I can teach you tricks and tips from embodiment, like when you're nervous, feel your feet on the ground. It's a good trick. It will make you less nervous. But we're actually going a bit deeper than that. Yeah. It's clear? Yeah.
When you were talking about the structure that you learn, I'm thinking if you go for the exact opposite that you are,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't know.
You want to use the first person. Use the first person. Say I.
Okay, if I want to have more structure and not be like,
Yeah.
jumping around, and I want to have some more structure, isn't it dangerous if I go just straight to the Japanese culture and say hi?
No. Next question. So her question is it dangerous to do the opposite of your habitual pattern? Is that correct? Yeah. So it's what she's expressing, and I see it in her body, is a fear of going too far the other way. And sometimes it's like too much. Like someone's really conservative and rigid, and we say earthy, and then we're like, right, go to naked improv comedy. It's not what we call calibrated. So as coaches, we always recommend practices which are not too much, right? So for you, maybe like doing Japanese, fascist martial arts would be like too much. So let's just start you off with some yoga that's not too strict, Like this is part of if I was coaching her to develop a practice, it's what's too much, but what's not enough. Yeah, and often people have this fear that they will lose their way of being, and you don't lose your personality. I saw a picture of me at 5 years old the other day, and I'm like, I'm Mark Walsh, fuck you. And I was like, I still have that, despite like 20 years of training or whatever, like all these cultural stuff I've done, I'm still this guy, but I have more possibilities. When I was a kid, I had to fight everyone. Now I choose to fight people. You saw this yesterday, right? Like we were going for a walk and some cyclist came by us and he was rude to us. He was like, oh, cool. And I was ready to fight him. I was like, get back here, like I wanted to fight him. You saw this, right? I was ready to fight him, but I was like, I don't need to like chase after the cyclist and fight him. It's not going to improve my day, So it's like, you still get to be you just get to be you a bit more skillfully, and this is the fear people have. Yeah? Dead cyclist by lake, Bruno. Cool. Any more questions before we practice again? Is it making sense? So what is embodiment? Let me hear 3 answers. What is embodiment? 3 one-sentence answers. What is it? That's an answer? Okay, she did like an action gesture. Yeah, good. Dynamic answer. Awareness and choice. Awareness and choice. 2 things. One more?
Something like exploring our animal, because I feel that we are like animals when we work like this.
Yeah.
Because it's something, when I open myself and I start to feel brave, it's something, spíš jako přemýšlím nad tím, kde se to bere, jestli to je fakt něco prostě, co máme jako v těle, jako zvířátka, že když se prostě otevřu, tak se cítím odvážná, ale že to máme ještě ten samý efekt. Takže to je nějaký stereotyp, který jako v tom těle někde je uložený. A mně to tak připadá, že to je něco jako tak biologického, že fakt se stačí naučit jenom používat pak ty paterny a
Okay, can I have a translation? I love, Czech is a beautiful language. It's like an alien made love to Polish, and their love, it's like their love child was Czech. It's a really beautiful language, it really is. It's, what did she say?
So Bitka said that if it's so like biological, like animalistic biological, that like if you just like learn the patterns of, okay, I'm open and I feel bravery.
Yes.
So it was like more towards the question.
Yeah, well, why it is the same for everyone? No, because I feel that it's the same for everyone. If I see it like this, everyone feels the same, no?
What do you mean everyone feels the same thing? I don't understand.
Like, if we sit like this, maybe he started to feel the same feelings like me.
Okay.
Because it is somewhere.
It's infectious.
History of our evolution, no?
Okay, so this.
Can I add? Because Bitka meant more like, okay, if everyone opens their chest, so everyone feels more confident, more stable. So the question is, that it's like the same, that there are some patterns which is for everyone?
Okay, let me speak to this and see if I answer your question in a roundabout way. So there's a cross-cultural layer, which is universal. In fact, it's mammalian. So can you tell when a dog is scared? Yes. Can you tell when a dog is angry? Arr! Yeah? Anger is forwards and tense, right? Fear is back and tense. Oh! So you can tell when a dog is angry or scared, right? So there's some part that you share with animals, and you definitely share the fight-flight response, like this, for example. I've taught in over 50 countries and everywhere in the world. When people are stressed, they don't go, I hate you. Like, that would be weird. They contract, right? Like, you laugh because it's so silly, but this is a cross-cultural pattern, for example. And some of this does come from our animal nature, like, where's my mic? Okay. So if you feel like an animal, for example, has an outside, that's like protective, right? And it has an inside that's soft. Okay, where do you like being kissed? All the soft stuff. Okay, what can you hit people with if you're a martial artist? All the outside stuff. Yeah? You hit people with this, not this, because the inside's there and it goes around the back. So we have an animal layer, and getting in touch with that's really important. Most of us are a little over-civilized. Okay, I'm what's called semi-feral. Feral is like a wild animal, okay? So embodiment helps with two things that are seemingly contradictory. One is it gets you in touch with your wildness. Yeah, like if you should be screaming loud enough for your neighbors to hear when you have an orgasm, right? Like, you should be able to like defend your family with your physicality, right? Like this should be, for me, this is part of our human instinct. Because we're a little over-civilized, we've lost this. Living in cities, living out of nature, we've forgotten the wind on our skin. You know, if you see people who spend a lot of time outside, they've got that naturalness back in their body, yeah? People that are hiking or whatever a lot. But the other side is interesting. It also makes us more self-overcoming. So it's this kind of idea from Nietzsche of transcending oneself. So it's the idea of like, hey, I'm going to have a cold shower even though it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm going to lift weights even though it's difficult. I'm going to sit still and meditate for 4 hours even though I want to move. So this idea of overcoming one's instincts, of actually rising above one's instincts. And most people in post-modernity, they don't have much self-control. It's like, oh, I'm hungry, it's fucking ice cream. It's like fast for 3 days. Like I fast for 3 days several times a year. And of course you want to eat, right? But you're like, no, self-overcoming. Now, if you have only self-overcoming, you become a Nazi, okay? And if or a very uptight religious person who's got like lots of rules, you know? If you have only instinct and flow, you become a ridiculous hippie who has no discipline, is totally unreliable, and no one trusts them. And they're like, oh, I've slept with someone, I'm really sorry, husband. And then I took the drugs, and now I'm an addict. And like, I've been that guy. It looks fun, but it's not fun. It's not fun. Yeah, it looks fun. Like, oh, I just fucking do what I want. It's like, I'm free. You're not free. You're in the cage of your instinct. You're not free, right? So there's the middle way, as the Buddhists would say, and I think sensible Christians too, of like, we have instincts, and it's good to know those instincts, you know? It's like, you should jump on your wife like a fucking tiger with consent, of course. You know, like in the evening, she should be like, oh, it's an animal, you know? That's good. Yeah, you should eat like when you eat, like I remember I had a Brazilian girlfriend, right? She, when I lived in Brazil, okay, and she would eat mangoes and the juice would just like run down her breasts, and she would like, oh. And I remember my mother visiting, and I was like, I never felt so English. I was like, oh my God, you know. Like she would eat a mango with more passion than most English people eat pussy. Like she had like just the most passion in her. And it's like, great, right? But then also, let's be disciplined. Let's learn, do a cold shower every day and say, I'm not getting out for 3 minutes, right? I'm gonna overcome my instincts. Trust me, as someone who used to be an alcoholic, you need to overcome your instincts. You need to transcend them, right? You need to say, you know what, I'm a Buddhist, I'm gonna be a vegan, God forbid. Okay, there's different ways to do it, you know? That's not my preference, that one. Yeah? But you need to do something, have some rules, like modern man's, well, I'll do what the fuck I want. How's that working out? How's the society we create when everyone just does what the fuck they want? It's ugly. Does this make sense? So like these are the two poles of embodiment. One is like feeling and flow and wildness and conscious dance, and the other one is discipline and martial arts and cold showers and ice baths. It's like you need both. Slight rant. I think let's practice. So it's enough for now. Does that give you something? Yeah? Okay, good.